your keyboard has really inspired a lot of interest from a lot of different kinds of people because it's very rare to put, I guess, all 31 of the keys of 31 tone equal temperament onto one keyboard. And actually
Yes.
be able to play it. What sort of
Mhm.
inspired that idea and that journey? How did you come into possession of this keyboard, or how did you make it?
So at the very beginning, I started to do tuning of a clavichord instrument, and when I started to tune it, I was confronted with the questions of how to do it, and then I discovered pure intervals, and then I tried a tempered tuning. It's called quarter karma mean tone, and that was the beginning of the journey actually. And this tuning requires more than 12 notes per octave if you do more transpositions of the core of the most important intervals. And this led me to this chromatic keyboard layout with 19 different pitches organized with split sharps. This is a tradition founded in the 15th century, as far as I know, beginning, and led to the 31 tone layout with split sharps, which I then decided to use on a clavichord kind of instrument I wanted to build at that point.
Yes. So, do
Yeah.
you have multiple instruments that use the keyboard layout that you're currently working with?
Yes. Yes. So this was a process of a couple of years actually, and at the beginning I planned to build a clavichord, electric instrument similar to the one I've analyzed and the one I've been working on with discovering tunings in just intonation, and then all related to the 31 tone world, so to say. That's how I visualized the just intonation I was discovering. And this type of instrument is electric and it's working with strings. And therefore, I planned with the computer an instrument because I haven't been working with instrument. I haven't been working on building instruments beforehand, so I was doing all by computer actually, 3D. And out of that process, I was thinking of having 31 tone instruments not only as electric stringed keyboards, but also MIDI controllers to play all the other sounds I use for the band Dsilton, which was the biggest motivation to play the compositions of the repertoire of the band.
How did you find your band members?
Yeah, we all located in the city of Vienna, and we know each other for many years and played not only in this context together. And first of all, it was a duo of David and me, and he decided at the same time to build a 31 tone electric guitar. And so it was actually 5 years ago, almost 6 years. And yeah, we decided to explore these tonalities with yeah, to write special compositions for that world.
Wow. Um,
Hmm.
so does that mean that David and yourself independently decided that you wanted to work with 31 tone equal temperament, or had you made that decision beforehand together to both sort of put instruments in the same tuning?
Yeah, I've been working on this since 2012 actually, and then I met David and we talked about the topics in detail, and then it sort of came out of that process.
Yeah. Well, that's really neat. You know, when I listen to the music that you play live, I'm struck by how many different sort of kinds of music you're playing, as well as how some of it sounds improvisational. Like how much are you incorporating improvisation into that sort of music?
In a sense, it's getting more and more because now I have got the keyboards available where I can do the improvisations not only limited to the special layouts I make before I had the 31 tone instruments. At the beginning, it was mainly about playing the material, the written material, with some spots for improvisation related to how you do it in let's say, no genre, but with chords or playing, improvising and modifying a vamp or something like this.
Right.
But the main idea was to be very specific, as you said, with the compositional material, and we use two techniques. We both are the composers of the ensemble, and we both use two techniques, and from these two techniques, these are the starting points, and there is a very huge variety of, let's say, styles where the journey can go, starting from these two techniques. And these are the first one was the harmonic and melodic, so the tonal idea, the concept of the band, and the second one is the rhythmic concept, which is based of a metric system we called and tablet time signatures, where you have the possibility of notating all whole ratio time modulations. And every piece of the repertoire of Dsilton shows these two elements.
So you're doing something new both with pitch and rhythm with everything you write. Is that kind of the idea?
Yes.
Yes. Very neat. When you're playing on the older keyboard, like I've seen live videos of you before you had the 31 tone instrument, and you're doing something that seems like improvising. Are you playing on a 12 note subset of 31 tone equal temperament? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So beforehand, I was using a Rhodes electric piano, and on this Rhodes electric piano, I found a special, subset of the 31 pitches, but varying each octave. So every octave is different in terms of the 31 tone intonation, and in other words, in terms of the enharmonics. And this was because I had no other chance to play the compositions of David. Later, it became, on the other hand, the starting point for new compositions, especially composed for this tuning. So this is each octave varying intonations of the 31 tone system. And I also made a solo piano record in this tuning, which was recorded live 2018 on a grand piano, and this grand piano was tuned to this 31 selection. this solo recording is mostly improvised.
Yes. How much did you have to shift your technique when you went to the new instrument from a 12-tone keyboard? Because I see you're mostly, in a lot of your videos, you're mostly playing black keys, which makes sense because that's where most of the notes are.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a special challenge. And all the time I was building the instrument, I was wondering how this is going to be once the instrument is built. And now it's almost 2 years ago as I built the first one that was ready for the stage, so to say. And the process of relearning all the pieces and discovering more is very fascinating and intense.
Absolutely. If you had to teach someone how to play that kind of keyboard when they had experience with 12-tone keyboard, how would you start?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's some approaches I could talk about. The very first one is diatonic approach. If you look at 12-tone keyboard layout as it is constructed of compound tetrachords. And this system leads to a chain of fourths and fifths, which is closed at a certain point, as we all know, for the 12-tone circle. But if you intonate these tetrachords in a different way, this can lead to a different amount of notes per octave. And the reason for black keys, even in the 12-note layout, can be traced back to the combination of tetrachords, which lead to hexachords. And then again, this structure is combined together to have the chain of fourths. So I would explain this diatonic. It's also related to the solfeggio. Every note you can name with the solfeggio syllable, and then you have the diatonic surrounding, so to say. And this works in 12-note, in the 12-note universe as well as in the 31-tone universe. So that's an approach that is the same in both tunings, with different results and different sounds of the same structure. So that's the functional view, so to say.
So are you using any solfege when you talk about 31-tone equal temperament?
Yes.
What do you do for the intervals that are not found in 12 or 19?
Yes. So that's beyond, so to say, the hexachord, and occurs as a result of widening the tonal range. And then the second approach is, of course, the intonation and the intonational aspects of 31. When you do the enharmonic change, you have different intonations. And when you do the enharmonic change, you involve notes from a different area diatonically, but at the same time, you can use this differently intonated tetrachords or other groupings in the same diatonic way, meaning you have the syllables of the solfege, and then you have a sharp note somewhere, and this sharp note is then the enharmonically changed pitch. So this tetrachord-based approach can also be used for different intonations of the tetrachords.
Well, I saw that you are using notation, of course, because you can notate 31 with the logic of mean tone temperament. Are you using sesquisharps and semisharps or halves and at all, or yeah?
It's used in the band and by David. So I use the flats and sharps, double flats and double sharps, like coming from quarter comma mean tone, and I note all the pieces with that because I find it in a way easy to have no intonation accidentals. But David is exactly kind of opposite. He writes with the quarter tone related accidentials to indicate diasis downwards, upwards.
I see. Huh. That's
Yeah.
interesting that you sort of don't do it and he does do it. Does that ever lead
Yes.
to a readability issue?
No, some discussions, and in some cases I rewrite pieces. I think it's the same with David, but we're doing this for a longer time now, so I can read it easily. Yeah, both.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Do you have any
Mm.
favorite scales that you like to use? I know you were mentioning that some of your improvisational scales were non-octave, but now that you have access to the full
Yeah.
instrument, do you find yourself having any favorites or being maybe
Mm.
scale agnostic in your writing?
Yeah. Lately, I try to look at tonal groupings. I really like to go more in detail, and which are, for example, um, as I mentioned beforehand, related to tetrachord. So phono groupings that can be compound together to result to bigger groupings, and this tetrachords in various intonations, and like with first the limit of 5, of course, kind of as we would say in just intonation, and
Mm-hmm.
then the limit of 7 with the enharmonically changed pitch, and of course with some pseudo 11th or 13th harmonic involved. So a step-to-step intonational approach, which with keeping the ideas of what you can do with tetrachords and triads. Yes,
Okay.
that can be one approach. But yeah, I'm searching. I'm searching for groupings I like or that are special or don't know, and then try to find out what's going on and do transposing. Yeah, that's a very fascinating thing that now I can do. Now it's possible to transpose every structure you found, which was not possible beforehand, where there were only 12-note keyboards.
Yes, that is a very
Yeah.
exciting possibility. Have you ever tried to transpose something and because of the technique of the keyboard and where the keys are, you've found it difficult to play logistically?
Yeah, it's not an isosymmetrical layout. It's so if you have, like, for example, diasis transpositions, that's results to completely different fingering and completely different feeling how this in the fingers, so to say. Yeah,
Right.
because it's not moving the same fingering up or downwards. It's a completely different haptic thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine that with like just the right transposition or scale that it would feel like maybe like playing two manuals on an organ with one hand or something where you just have to
Mm-hmm.
do a lot of work to get across.
Yeah.
When you play the keyboard, I know that you're playing in 31 tone equal temperament most of the time. And maybe I had
Yes.
heard this wrong. I thought somebody said that it actually has like 34 keys per octave, but some of them are doubled on the same pitch class. Is that right, or is that just me remembering wrong?
That's right. So there are actually 36 keys.
Ooh,
That's why sometimes say it's 31 plus 5, because this results of 3 times 12, and that's a result of the 12 keyed um, MIDI keyboards I used for building. But that's only for the MIDI instruments, and I sometimes use these additional keys for just intonation, where you also have different intonations for right keys, like yeah, 5 limit, extended 5 limit, just intonation, for example, or yeah. But mostly I use these additional keys for controlling, since these are MIDI keyboards. I can do the controlling with this additional keys that are not all on the keyboard itself, just a few.
Yeah, so you do play other scales besides 31 tone equal temperament using the keyboard if you want to tune it a little bit differently.
Yes. I've for a composer, I've tried the extended 5 limit with different intonations for the white keys, as I mentioned before, but there are also historical instruments built for that, and I use just intonation, 7 limit just intonation. One piece of one compositional cycle of the repertoire is completely in 7 limit just intonation, mixed with 31. So the guitar, of course, is in 31 because it's 31 Edo guitar, and the keys are tuned to 7 limit just. So the fifths are pure, and this makes a slightly different intonations for some chords and some structures, and the composition is 7 limit just intonation based on septimal, seventh, pure fifths and pure thirds, and this was coming from transcriptions of field recordings. Actually, that was the starting point of the band. Of Dsilton, we played this arrangement of field recording transcriptions.
Oh wow, that's a really neat place to get started. And so, was part of transcribing that trying to work within a refined pitch language so that you could have more than 12 pitches per octave for transcription purposes?
Yeah.
So where does the name come from? You say it, is it Dsilton?
Yeah, as you like, it's Dsilton mostly when I talk about it, and Dsilton means it's kind of related to the instruments of that field recordings I've been looking at and transcribing and rearranging, and then this name was created using this word of how it was written on the paper, so to say, and how it looked like. And at the same time, it's Ziel means target, and so it's multiple meanings of a word.
I wanted to ask more about how you constructed your keyboard because I
Yeah,
think you said earlier you used 12 tone MIDI keyboards to do it. Were you like combining a few of them in a row? Like how exactly does that work
yeah.
and how'd you get to that?
It's kind of a, let's say, upcycling process. I used MIDI keyboards, used MIDI keyboards, older used MIDI keyboards, and tried to find a way with digital manufacturing and 3D printing to transform these to 31 tone keyboards together. They have together 3 times 12 is 36, so that's enough for 31. And yeah,
Oh, I
so it
see. Hence the reason for 36 keys because then you can just take the 12 tone MIDI layout and just chunk it up two more times and then you have everything you need for 3110.
exactly right.
Neat. So are you retuning that with a computer or are you actually plugging something into the MIDI keyboard to retune the MIDI data itself?
The first I go to the computer with different MIDI keyboards, um, and then doing 3 different tunings for each keyboard. And I mostly use a synthesizer I created myself, and it's a sampler. And with the sampler, I can do the tunings in the computer.
Oh, awesome. So, creating that yourself then, what software were you using?
I was using SketchUp. That's a free. It used to be freeware 3D software for architectural ideas, I think mainly, but it worked also for instrument building. At least how I used it. Yeah.
Right. What do you think are some of the challenges of being like a polystylistic microtonal jazz group? Like, what are you trying to
Yeah.
convey?
There's no stylistic idea, basically. It's about working, starting from special techniques, and then the stylistic elements that can occur are kind of the result of the process. So I was in very many situations surprised of what came out of that process. At the clavinet I was using in a different way than on the Rhodes I was mentioning before.
Hmm.
And again, David is using different compositional techniques for his works, often working with tone rows. So there's no stylistic idea or genre idea. It's about working with the techniques we agree, and as I said before, the rhythmic concept and the tonal and harmonic space of 31.
So, how do
Yeah.
you practice together? with
Yeah.
some of the rhythms that you've got there, it seems so difficult. Like, do you use a computer to memorize how it sounds, or do you just go in with the music and figure it out that way, or?
Yeah, both. Both, yeah. So since there are so many rhythmic modulations in some pieces, it's many situations helpful to have the computer played it to kind of control how it sounds in a mathematical way, so to say. And the other thing is then to practice, practice alone a lot, learn it by heart.
Yeah.
So there is no real chance to read music in that context. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it would be impossible to sight read any of them,
Right.
for sure. Yeah. That's great. To what extent would you say you've been influenced by New Complexity? Does it inform a lot of what you do, or do you think that you're sort of doing something different?
Basically, it's exactly the opposite.
Ah.
It's not, yeah, it's not about being complex because of being complex. It's because it can be complex because of all results of all ideas together.
Yes.
And it's about to be played accurately.
Do you use things like time signatures that don't have powers of 2 on the bottom a lot, or like irrational values, or like what kinds of?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
so-called irrational, but this term is actually not precise because it's basically rational time
Right.
signatures in a way, because it's all we were using whole number ratios. So for triplets and quintuplets and all possible tuplets, so to say, you can work on. And all these metric modulations are related in whole number ratios together.
I see. So then that means that you could sort of think of like a polymeter a little bit, like if you were in 3, like
Yes.
and you were going to 5,
Right.
you can just
Yeah, take the new tempo, and then you can indicate that with the time signature.
Would you say that that is an extremely helpful tool for playing rhythmically difficult music?
Yeah, and it's at the same time it's a limiting tool. So
Right.
it's not possible to do all possible modulations, because then the numbers get very high very quickly.
Yes.
Yes. So, and there is also the possibility of going one way and returning in a different way, like starting with triplets and then modulating and adding some quintuplets, and then you can go circle-wise, so to say. For composing, it's a limiting tool. And that's also the fascinating part of it, because you can do some metric modulations and go kind of in circles, like you do triplet modulations, quintuplet modulations, and then septuplet modulations, and then you use a different order to go back to the original time.
That's a really, really great technique. I was also wondering if you've worked with anything like micro rhythm, or like, like pentuple swing, septuple swing, or something where you have kind of like a big meter crammed into a small space, yeah?
Yeah, very often. Every piece shows aspects of that techniques, yes.
Yeah, that's fascinating. What do you think would be a good example of a piece that shows that really clearly?
Dsilton.
Oh yeah,
That's
the original.
Yeah. That's where I tried how to notate the transcriptions with this higher limit modulations and higher limit tonalities. Yeah.
Very neat. What strikes me as really interesting about Dsilton is how, like, both at least I would think both you and David are very concerned with like approximating just intonation in a tuning system that you have. But then in a lot of your music, you're using harmonies that are sort of difficult to figure out, which I really enjoy.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so the just intonation aspect can be one technique used, but at the same time, it's fascinating, for example, to use 12-tone serialism in terms of tone rows and so on, and intonate it with 31-tone intonations, and also the diatonic chords of stacking thirds, so to say, of triads, can be occurring at the same time. It's fascinating to work on 31-tone serialism, so taking all notes of 31 and doing some kind of conceptual ideas beforehand, and then make music out of it. So many different concepts are used in the repertoire.
Yes, a lot of different techniques, and it definitely shows itself in just the sheer variety of the music you've got online already.
Oh, nice.
So
cool, thanks.
Yeah. So do you have? I was trying to find it. I couldn't find your first album. Is that out yet or not yet?
Not yet. That's
not
why
yet.
It wasn't. Yeah. We're working on it, and 2021 is the time where it's going to be published. Spring or summer 2021, the first debut album of Dsilton is going to be out, and it will show the repertoire we collected over the last 5 or 6 years, and from the very first concert, starting with 2 pieces, and now it's going to be more than 1 hour of different compositions of David and myself, and mostly all the pieces we've been playing live are going to be documented on the record.
Well, that's very exciting. I can't wait to hear that.
Cool.
All right, great. Oh, and we can find your music on Bandcamp, right? Under Georg Vogel?
Right, that's one possibility. I've got my website which is georgvogel.net, and we got 2 YouTube channels.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on Now and Zen. This has been a really illuminating talk, and we can't wait for the album.
Nice. Thank you again for your interest, and I will let you know as soon as we are finished with the work.
Alrighty. Thanks for listening to our latest episode of Now and Zen featuring Dsilton. Our last 2 episodes before we go on hiatus will feature Methods Body and Subrag Singh. We are on hiatus until the Patreon account for Now and Zen gets 60 patrons, so you can support us at the Patreon link in the description. During the hiatus, I will still be uploading bonus content to the Patreon account, at least once a month, if not more, and the bonus content might not have to do with podcasting, but it will definitely have to do with microtonality, having to do with cover songs, collaborations, educational material, theory, or a combination of any of those. So please check that out if you are interested in supporting microtonal education and microtonal music curation. A big thanks to our Zen Harmonic patrons, of course, for supporting this episode, as well as our Zen Harmonic gods, Sheldon Bird, Tristan Nunez, Barry Lemon, Ari Cello, Adam Freese, Matthew Sheeran, Vincenzo Sicarella, Kit Duguay, Hector McGuffin, Christopher Bailey, Leland O. Weigel, Amy Coleman, Joe Weigel, Tina Harmon Carteau, and the Brass Whisperer. Thank you very much for listening. We'll catch you next time on Now and Zen.